The auction hall goes silent as a man in grease-stained work clothes raises his hand. Gasps ripple through the room. Billionaires, art collectors, senators, and CEOs stare in disbelief as the auctioneer freezes mid-sentence. The painting behind him, America's Golden Horizon, valued at over $3 billion, is supposed to be the crown jewel of the night. Then the man speaks. "I fix air conditioners for a living," he says calmly, "and that painting is fake." Laughter erupts. Security moves in. Socialites sneer. But the man continues, unbothered. "The real one is hanging in my living room." No one in that room realizes that, in the next 70 minutes, the balance of power in America's most secretive business chamber is about to collapse. And the man they're mocking is the one who controls it. The gavel slammed down hard. $3.2 million. Sold. Gas rippled through the auction hall like a sudden gust of wind. Cameras flashed. Murmurs rose. The painting on display, Endless Rivers at Dawn, sat under white lights, framed in gold, presented as a once-in-a-lifetime masterpiece by the legendary American Chinese painter, Harold Wen. The Redwood Art Pavilion in downtown San Francisco buzzed with power, money, and ego. Then a voice cut through the noise. "That painting is fake." The room froze. Every head turned toward the back. A man in a faded gray jacket stood near the exit, one hand still gripping a battered toolbox. Grease stained his sleeves. His boots were scuffed. He looked painfully out of place among the tailored suits and diamond necklaces. Security stiffened. The auctioneer blinked. "Excuse me?" The man didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "The brushwork is wrong. The ink layering is rushed. Harold Wen never painted skies like that after 1998. He paused. "You're auctioning a replica." Laughter erupted, sharp, mocking. "Who let the repair guy in here? Is this some kind of joke?" A woman in the front row scoffed. "If random laborers could judge fine art, then this entire hall would be a circus." The man didn't flinch. His name was Ethan Cole, 32 years old, air conditioning repairman, and he was absolutely certain he was right. Ethan stepped forward, ignoring the security guards moving toward him. "The original painting isn't here," he said calmly. "It's been missing for 6 years." The auctioneer forced a smile. "Sir, this piece was verified by 3 international experts." Ethan nodded once. "They were paid to lie." That did it. Security grabbed his arms. The crowd buzzed louder now, hungry for humiliation. Phones came out. This was the kind of chaos people loved to watch. "Throw him out. Ban him for life." But before they could drag him away, a cold, authoritative voice rang out. "Let him speak." The room fell silent again. From the VIP balcony above, a woman stood. Tall, composed. Her black suit was immaculate. Her gaze was sharp enough to cut glass. Claire Monroe, CEO of Monroe Holdings and one of the most powerful figures in Northern California, stared down at Ethan with visible curiosity. "I'll give you 1 minute," she said. "Convince me." Security hesitated. Ethan exhaled once, then walked to the front like a man who had nothing left to lose. "Harold Wen signed his paintings using mineral ink sourced from Oregon after his illness," he said. "This one uses synthetic carbon ink. You can test it." The auctioneer's face tightened. Ethan continued. "Also, the mountain ridges are mirrored. Wen never mirrored landscapes. He believed nature had a symmetry." A beat, then another. Claire's eyes narrowed. "Pause the auction," she said. Chaos exploded. Experts rushed forward. Staff whispered urgently. The bidders leaned in, tension thick enough to choke on. 15 minutes later, the truth detonated. The painting was fake. The hall erupted. Not in laughter this time, but outrage. Bidders shouted. Lawyers were called. The auctioneer looked like he might faint. And Ethan Cole stood quietly to the side, toolbox at his feet, expression unreadable. Claire Monroe descended the stairs slowly, heels echoing. She stopped in front of him. "Who are you?" "Just an AC technician," Ethan replied. Her lips twitched. "No, you're not." Before she could say more, a furious man shoved through the crowd. "You humiliated us," he barked. This was Victor Langley, vice chairman of the Redwood Commerce Circle, a powerful business guild that quietly controlled half the city's elite transactions. You had no right. I had every right, Ethan said calmly. Fraud is fraud, Victor sneered. You think you're some hero? You fix air conditioners. Know your place. That was when another figure stepped forward, a silver-haired man with tired eyes. Enough, he said softly. Ethan stiffened. Dad. Robert Cole stood beside his son, hands clenched. He wore the same worn uniform. We're leaving. Victor laughed. Of course, back to crawling through vents. Ethan turned, eyes cold. Being poor doesn't make someone worthless. Victor leaned in. And pretending you matter won't make you powerful. They left the hall under whispers and stares. Outside, the night air was sharp. You shouldn't have come, Robert said quietly. They were lying, Ethan replied. I couldn't ignore it. Robert sighed. This city doesn't forgive people like us for being right. Across the street, Victor Langley watched them with narrowed eyes. He pulled out his phone. Find out who he really is, he muttered. No repairman humiliates me and walks away. That night, Ethan returned to his small apartment on the edge of Oakland. He locked the door. He opened a hidden safe behind an air vent. Inside were documents, old photographs, and a single heavy signet ring engraved with a red wolf crest. He stared at it for a long moment, jaw tight. Not yet, he murmured. Across the bay, Claire Monroe stood in her penthouse, replaying the scene again and again. An AC repairman who could dismantle a billion-dollar lie in seconds. Something didn't add up, and deep beneath the city's polished surface, old power structures began to shift. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from, because things are about to get much more dangerous from here. The next morning, Ethan was halfway inside a restaurant ceiling, tightening a loose vent, when his phone buzzed nonstop in his pocket. He ignored it at first. Phones always rang when he was working. Usually complaints, usually unpaid invoices, but this time it didn't stop. When he finally climbed down and checked the screen, there were 12 missed calls, all from unknown numbers. Then one text, Claire Monroe. We need to talk. Ethan stared at it for a long second. He hadn't given her his number. He typed back anyway. About what? The reply came instantly. About the painting and about you. They met an hour later at a quiet cafe overlooking the bay. Claire arrived alone, no assistance, no security. She studied Ethan like a puzzle that refused to solve itself. You knew the painting was fake before you walked in, she said. Yes. Why go public? Because silence helps liars, Ethan replied. Claire leaned back. You embarrassed powerful people last night. Victor Langley doesn't forget things like that. I'm aware, she paused. The Redwood Commerce Circle has been bleeding money through fake assets for years. Last night exposed more than just a painting. Ethan said nothing. Claire lowered her voice. You don't speak like a technician. You don't observe like one either. Ethan met her gaze. People see what fits their expectations. She smiled faintly. Then let me be clear. I don't believe you fix air conditioners for a living. I do, he said calmly. I just happen to do other things well. Claire considered him. The Commerce Circle is calling an emergency session tonight. Victor wants your head. I won't be there. That's the problem, she said. They want you to disappear quietly. For the first time, something flickered in Ethan's eyes. Not fear, but annoyance. They've tried that before, he said. Claire's curiosity deepened. Before? Ethan stood. Thanks for the warning. That's it, she asked. You humiliate $1 billion syndicate and walk away? I don't walk, Ethan replied. I wait. That afternoon, Robert Cole was cornered outside a job site by two men in dark suits. You're Ethan's father, one said. Robert stiffened. Who's asking? People who don't like being embarrassed. That night, Robert didn't come home. Ethan found his father's phone crushed near the curb, screen shattered, SIM card removed. Something cold settled in his chest. He made one call. I told you not to, came a voice on the other end. They took my father, Ethan said. Silence, then. It begins. An hour later, the Redwood Commerce Circle convened behind closed doors in a private high-rise conference room. Victor Langley stood at the head of the table, furious. He's a nobody, Victor snapped. Yet he exposed us, a woman scoffed. He's protected. By who? Victor demanded. The doors opened. Ethan walked in. The room erupted. What is he doing here? Who let him in? Victor stood. This is a private... Ethan tossed a flash drive onto the table. That contains transaction records for every fake asset sold through this circle in the last 5 years. The room went silent. Victor laughed nervously. You're bluffing. Ethan pressed a button. Screens lit up. Names. Accounts. Dates. Panic spread. A voice spoke from the shadows. Enough. A man stepped forward. Tall, broad-shouldered, face scarred by time. Gasps echoed. Daniel Cole, someone whispered. The Red Wolf. The founder of the Redwood Commerce Circle. Presumed dead for 8 years. Ethan's father. Victor staggered back. That's impossible. Instead, she went to Ethan. I'm in, she said simply. Whatever this becomes. Ethan studied her. You don't need to do this. She smiled. Neither did you. That night, they stood together overlooking the city, the weight of unspoken choices heavy between them. For the first time, Ethan allowed himself to feel something dangerous. Connection. Across town in a dimly lit room, a new player watched the news silently. Victor Langley's arrest. The fall of old power. He smiled slowly. Good, he murmured. Let them tear each other apart. He reached for his phone. It's time to move. The attack came at dawn, not with guns or sirens, but with silence. Ethan noticed it the moment he stepped outside. Too quiet, no delivery trucks. No street vendors arguing over coffee. Even the birds were gone. His instincts tightened. Get back inside, he told Claire calmly. She didn't ask questions. She locked the door behind them just as a car across the street exploded. The blast rattled windows, sending glass raining onto the pavement. Smoke rose fast. Within seconds, 3 black SUVs screeched into view, blocking both ends of the street. Claire's breath hitched. They're not hiding anymore. No, Ethan said. They're panicking. Men poured out of the vehicles, organized, armed, disciplined. Not street thugs, contractors. Ethan grabbed his phone and sent one message. Execute contingency. Then he turned to Claire. You trust me? She didn't hesitate. Yes. Good. They moved through the back stairwell just as gunfire shattered the front door. Alarms screamed. Footsteps thundered above and below. Outside, the alley was narrow and damp. A black sedan rolled forward silently, door opening. Daniel Cole sat inside. Get in, he said. They drove straight into chaos. Sirens wailed now. Helicopters cut across the sky. News vans swarmed the burning street. By noon, the story was everywhere. Attempted assassination. Power struggle within elite business circles. Names were still being withheld, but everyone knew. The Redwood Commerce Circle was officially at war with itself. In a secure location outside the city, Ethan paced. They crossed into public terror, he said. That changes the rules. Daniel nodded. Which is what they want. Fear. Overreaction. Ethan stopped. No, they want me visible. Claire watched him closely. You're going to give them that. Yes. That evening, Ethan appeared live on every major financial network. No guards, no threats, just him. I stayed silent for years, he said evenly into the camera. I watched corruption spread because I believed exposure would be enough. I was wrong. Phones across the city buzzed. The Redwood Commerce Circle will be dismantled, Ethan continued. Every illegal operation, every violent affiliate, every stolen dollar will be exposed within 72 hours. A pause. And anyone who targets civilians will be treated as an enemy of the state. The message was clear. That night, the counterattack came fast. False allegations surfaced. Fabricated scandals. Claire's name was dragged through the mud, accused of insider trading, bribery, even murder. Her board demanded answers. I won't step down, Claire said firmly. You may not have a choice, one director replied. Ethan watched from the corner of the room. You're doing exactly what they want. Claire met his eyes. Then tell me what to do. Nothing, he said. I'll handle it. He did. Within hours, leaked recordings surfaced. proof that the allegations against Claire had been manufactured. The whistleblower, a mid-level accountant who vanished minutes after the files went public. The city leaned in. Then came the reveal that shook everything. A hidden faction within the Redwood Commerce Circle, calling itself the Harbor Group, emerged from the shadows. Old money, old violence. People who believed the circle was never meant to be clean. Their leader finally spoke, a man named Leonard Cross, former intelligence, private military ties, untouchable reputation. His message was short. This city belongs to those willing to do what others won't. Ethan listened, expression hard. That's the man who ordered the hit, Daniel said quietly. And he won't stop, Claire added. Ethan nodded once. Then neither will I. The next 48 hours were relentless. Warehouses raided, shell companies frozen, Harbor Group operatives arrested in 3 states. Each move met with pushback, bribes, threats, violence. Robert Cole was cornered again, this time at a public market. Ethan arrived just as a knife flashed. The attacker didn't walk away. By the 3rd day, Leonard Cross made his final move. Claire was taken, not kidnapped violently. No chaos, no witnesses, just gone. Ethan found her phone on the back seat of her car, still warm. His hands tightened. Daniel put a hand on his shoulder. This is the part where you decide what kind of man you are. Ethan's voice was low. I already know. That night, Ethan walked alone into the Redwood Commerce Circle headquarters, the same place that had laughed at him weeks earlier. Every screen lit up. Leonard Cross appeared. Come alone, Leonard said, or she dies. Ethan didn't blink. Send the location. Leonard smiled. You really are different. The feed cut. Ethan turned to the room. Lock it down. What about you? Someone asked. Ethan picked up his jacket. I'm done watching. As he stepped into the night, the city held its breath. Ethan didn't bring weapons. That was the first mistake Leonard Cross made when he watched the surveillance feed. He expected rage, expected recklessness. What he didn't expect was calm. The location Leonard sent was an abandoned shipping terminal near the Sacramento River, a place long stripped of cameras and jurisdiction. Rusted cranes, empty docks, echoes that swallowed sound. Ethan arrived alone just before midnight. The air smelled like oil and damp steel. Floodlights snapped on one by one, bathing the dock in harsh white light. A slow clap echoed from the shadows. Leonard Cross stepped forward, smiling. You came, Leonard said. No army, no tricks. Ethan stopped 10 feet away. You wanted me, Leonard gestured. I wanted to see if the rumors were true. The mechanic who dismantled an empire. Where is she? Leonard chuckled. Straight to business. I respect that. He snapped his fingers. Claire was brought out from behind a container, hands bound but posture straight. There was a cut on her lip, dried blood at her temple, but her eyes locked onto Ethan immediately. She shook her head slightly. Don't. Ethan's jaw tightened. Leonard watched the exchange with interest. She's impressive. Didn't beg, didn't cry. Even tried to negotiate my logistics network. Claire shot him a look. Your supply chain is sloppy. Leonard laughed. See? Wasted talent. Ethan stepped forward. Leonard raised a hand. Careful. This is where men usually fail. What do you want? Ethan asked. Leonard's smile faded. I want the Redwood Commerce Circle back the way it was. Fear-based, profitable, untouchable. That version is dead. Leonard nodded. Then I'll build a new one on top of yours. He leaned closer. Starting with her. Before Ethan could move, a gun pressed into Claire's side. The dock went silent. Ethan's mind worked fast. Distances, angles, timing. You kill her, Ethan said, voice steady, and everything you built collapses within a week. Leonard shrugged. Power always rebuilds. That's where you're wrong, Ethan replied. You don't have loyalty, you have contracts, and I already bought them. Leonard's eyes flickered. Right on cue, headlights flared behind the terminal. Engines roared. Leonard turned just as armed federal vehicles poured in from every access road. You planned this, Leonard hissed. Ethan didn't deny it. Gunfire erupted. Chaos exploded across the dock. Men scattered. Shouts echoed. Leonard's grip on Claire loosened as he spun toward the threat. That was all Ethan needed. He closed the distance in seconds. The gun clattered to the ground. Claire stumbled back as Ethan slammed Leonard into a container wall. They fought hard and fast. No wasted movement. Leonard was trained, but Ethan was relentless. A blade flashed. Ethan took it in the shoulder and didn't stop. He drove Leonard to the ground just as armed agents swarmed the dock. Leonard laughed through bloodied teeth. "You think this ends me?" Leonard spat. "There's always another." Ethan leaned close. "Not this time." Leonard was dragged away screaming. Claire rushed to Ethan's side. "You're bleeding." "It's nothing," he said, though his vision blurred slightly. She grabbed his face. "Don't lie to me." He allowed himself a breath. "I wasn't going to lose you." For a moment the noise faded. Sirens, orders, footsteps. Only them. At dawn, the city woke to headlines that shook every boardroom in America. The Harbor Group dismantled. Leonard Cross in federal custody. The Redwood Commerce Circle placed under government oversight, with Ethan Cole named interim chairman. Reactions were split. Some called him a hero. Others called him dangerous. Ethan didn't care. Claire sat beside him in the hospital later that day, fingers intertwined with his. "You could walk away now," she said quietly. "Let someone else clean up the mess." Ethan shook his head. "If I walk away, it starts again." She studied him. "Then don't do it alone." Their relationship didn't explode into romance. It settled, solid, earned. Weeks passed. Trials began. Assets were seized. Corrupt officials fell one by one. The city exhaled. Robert Cole watched it all from his modest home, pride heavy in his chest. "You never wanted this life," he told his son. "I still don't," Ethan replied, "but I won't let it rot." The Redwood Commerce Circle reconvened for the first time without fear in the room. Ethan stood at the center. "This isn't about power," he said. "It's about accountability. Anyone who can't live with that can leave now." Several did. Good. Later, alone with Claire on a quiet pier, she spoke softly. "People still look down on you, on where you came from." Ethan smiled faintly. "Let them." She hesitated. "What about us?" He turned to her fully. "I don't know what the future looks like, but I know who I want beside me." She didn't answer immediately, then she nodded. The water moved gently below them. The city hummed behind them. Not perfect, but better. The peace didn't last. It never did. 2 months after Leonard Cross was arrested, Ethan stood in the Redwood Commerce Circle boardroom, watching a room full of powerful people pretend they weren't afraid of him. They nodded. They smiled. They spoke about transparency and reform. But beneath the polished words, he could feel it, the quiet resistance. Power didn't disappear. It waited. "Motion to approve the new compliance framework," one executive said quickly. Ethan didn't respond. Instead, he slid a thin folder across the table. "Before we vote," he said calmly, "I'd like to address something else." The room stiffened. "That offshore account in Nevada," Ethan continued, eyes moving slowly from face to face. "The one funding private security firms that don't exist on paper." A man near the end of the table paled. "That's illegal," Ethan finished, "and it's still happening." Silence. Claire, seated beside him, didn't look surprised. She had learned to recognize this moment, the one right before the mask came off. "I warned everyone," Ethan said evenly. "The old games are over." A woman stood abruptly. "You can't run this place like a dictatorship." Ethan finally looked at her. "I'm not running it like anything. I'm exposing it." She scoffed. "You think because you came from nothing, you're morally superior?" Ethan's voice didn't rise. "No. I think because I came from nothing, I recognize rot faster." Several members stood and walked out. Good. That afternoon, the retaliation returned, but this time, it was subtle. A regulatory agency opened an investigation into Ethan's personal finances. Anonymous tips accused him of manipulating federal raids. Media outlets began framing him as a vigilante businessman with unchecked authority. Claire read the headlines in silence. "They're rewriting the story," she said. Ethan nodded. "They always do." That night, Robert Cole collapsed. Ethan arrived at the hospital just as doctors rushed his father into surgery. A stress-induced heart failure, they said. Too many years. Too many close calls. Ethan sat alone in the waiting room, hands clenched, guilt pressing down hard. This was the cost. Claire joined him quietly. He's strong. He shouldn't have to be, Ethan replied, voice low. None of this should touch him. She hesitated. Then why do you keep going? Ethan stared at the floor. Because if I stop, everything he endured was for nothing. Robert survived, but the warning was clear. That night, Ethan made a decision. He called an emergency assembly of the Redwood Commerce Circle and invited the press. No closed doors, no shadows. This ends now, Ethan said into a sea of cameras. Every financial record, every decision, every partnership, public. Gasps echoed. You'll destroy the circle, someone shouted. Ethan met the camera. Then it deserves to be destroyed. The fallout was immediate. Markets reacted. Stocks dipped. Investors panicked. But something else happened too. People started talking. Whistleblowers came forward. Employees told stories they'd buried for years. Regulators listened. For the first time, the circle couldn't hide behind prestige, and that terrified the remaining power brokers. 3 nights later, Claire didn't come home. There was no struggle, no broken glass, just absence. Ethan knew instantly. He checked his phone. One message. You exposed us. Now choose. A location followed. Ethan didn't call the police. He went to Daniel Cole instead. They have her, Ethan said. Daniel's face hardened. This isn't cross. No, Ethan replied. This is internal. The final poison of the circle. They arrived at an old private estate north of Napa Valley. Quiet, isolated, wealth disguised as peace. Claire was inside. So were 3 board members who had walked out weeks earlier. This didn't have to happen, one of them said as Ethan entered. Ethan scanned the room. Claire sat tied to a chair, bruised but alert. This happened the moment you decided we were disposable, another said. Ethan's gaze never left Claire. You were corrupt. A laugh, bitter. So is the system. You just wanted control. Ethan stepped closer. Untie her. You don't give orders here, the man replied. You resign, publicly. Transfer authority back to the circle. Or she dies. The room held its breath. Claire shook her head once. No. Ethan exhaled slowly. Then he spoke quietly. You think I don't know how this ends? The men exchanged glances. You think I didn't plan for betrayal? Ethan continued. The moment you kidnapped her, every device in this house became evidence. The men froze. You made one mistake, Ethan said. You assumed I still believed in mercy. Armed agents flooded the estate. Screams. Panic. Orders shouted. Claire was freed as the men were dragged away in cuffs. Ethan caught her as she stumbled forward. He held her tightly, eyes closed, breath uneven. I'm sorry, he whispered. She pulled back just enough to look at him. Don't apologize for fighting. By morning, the final faction of the Redwood Commerce Circle was dismantled. No speeches, no celebrations, just silence. Weeks later, Ethan stood on a quiet overlook outside the city, Claire beside him, Robert recovering slowly at home. The circle was gone, replaced by something smaller, regulated, human. You could leave now, Claire said softly. No one would stop you. Ethan looked out at the horizon. I think I already have. She waited. I don't want power, he said. I want peace. She reached for his hand. Then let's build that. The morning air was crisp and sharp when Ethan and Claire arrived at the Redwood Commerce Circle's old headquarters one final time. The building loomed like a ghost, its glass facade reflecting the rising sun. Once a symbol of fear and unchecked power, now it felt hollow, empty. They walked through the lobby silently, their footsteps echoing in the vast, deserted space. Ethan paused by the elevators. This place, it holds too much history, he said. Too many mistakes. Claire didn't respond immediately. Her eyes scanned the empty hall, lingering on the security cameras and the polished marble floor. People say power corrupts everyone, she finally said. But you, she paused, choosing words carefully. You proved it doesn't have to. He smiled faintly. I didn't prove anything. I just made sure those who should answer did. They reached the top floor, Once a lavish executive suite, now stripped of all ornamentation. Papers, files, and the trappings of wealth were gone. Only a single desk remained. Ethan set down the ring he always wore, red wolf crest glinting in the morning light, on the bare surface. "I'm leaving this here," he said. "Let it remind whoever comes next that this isn't about fear. It's about responsibility." Claire looked at him. "And the circle?" "They'll rebuild," Ethan replied, "but differently this time. Less greed, more accountability." For a moment they stood together in silence. Then a faint noise behind them, a shuffle, careful and deliberate. Ethan tensed instantly, instinct screaming, but it was only Robert, limping slightly but smiling. "You boys cleaned house," Robert said with dry humor. "Proud of you, son." Ethan shook his head. "It's not over until everyone learns the lesson." Robert chuckled. "Lesson learned. You just need to live now." Claire took a deep breath, her gaze meeting Ethan's. "Do you ever get tired?" "Every day," he admitted. "But some things are bigger than exhaustion." She smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. "Then let's be bigger together." Outside, the streets were waking up. Life moved on despite all the chaos, all the power struggles, all the betrayals. News vans circled the building, reporting live on the dismantling of the Redwood Commerce Circle. Headlines were already changing, portraying Ethan as a vigilante hero, the unlikely savior of a city corrupted by hidden empires. But Ethan didn't care about headlines. He cared about balance, about making sure the mistakes of the past didn't repeat themselves. He turned to Claire. "We should go. There's a lot of work to do. Rebuilding trust, helping people, making sure the next generation sees a different path." She nodded. "Let's start with the circle then?" "No," Ethan said. "We start with ourselves." They stepped outside together into the sunlight. A cool breeze brushed past, carrying the scent of the bay. For the first time in months, Ethan felt unburdened, free of the constant tension that had defined his life. He realized the true victory wasn't in exposing corruption or defeating enemies. It was in reclaiming their own lives. Claire grabbed his hand, and for a moment, words weren't necessary. Their connection, forged through danger, strategy, and shared purpose, didn't need explanation. It simply existed, quiet but unshakable. Ethan glanced back at the building one last time. "No more ghosts," he said softly. "No more shadows from the past."
"Good," Claire replied. "We have a future to build." And so they walked away, side by side, the city sprawling before them. A city full of second chances, renewed trust, and the promise of change. The Red Wolf ring glinted faintly in the morning sun, not as a symbol of power, but of responsibility, resilience, and the courage to do what was right, even when it was hard. As the camera panned out, Ethan and Claire disappeared into the streets, leaving behind the ghosts of the past and stepping into a brighter, uncertain but hopeful horizon. Weeks passed, but peace never came quietly. The city had seen the fall of the Redwood Commerce Circle, and people whispered Ethan Cole's name with awe and fear in equal measure. Even as he tried to reclaim a normal rhythm with Claire and his father Robert, the remnants of old power lingered, like shadows refusing to vanish. One evening, Ethan returned to his apartment to find a note slipped under the door. No signature, no threat, just 4 words written in sharp, deliberate letters. "You are being watched." He read it twice. Calmly, he pocketed the paper. "Do you see this?" he asked Claire, holding it up. She frowned, crossing her arms. "Another game? Haven't we done enough?" "No," Ethan said. "They've been waiting for this moment. The moment they think we've let our guard down." Claire studied him, realization dawning. "Then we don't let them." The next morning, Ethan arranged a discreet meeting with federal investigators handling the circle's dismantling. Using his insider knowledge, he supplied a dossier outlining every remaining faction's influence, bank accounts, and potential leverage points. It was meticulous, brutal, and it worked. Agents moved to freeze assets, intercept shipments, and prevent retaliation before it could ignite. By afternoon, Claire received a call from a high-ranking executive at a rival firm. "Miss Monroe," the man said, voice strained. Your acquisitions are being sabotaged, contracts pulled, investors worried. This isn't business, it's a warning. Claire didn't flinch. She hung up and looked at Ethan. They're trying to corner us. Good, Ethan replied. Let them come. We'll see who can't handle the truth. That evening, Ethan and Claire drove through the city, checking several sites under surveillance. Downtown warehouses, abandoned construction sites, storage lockers. Everywhere they found signs of tampering. Locked doors broken, security footage wiped, evidence of attempts to move illicit goods. This isn't just revenge, Claire said. This is organized. Someone is rebuilding. I know, Ethan admitted. And I know who. He picked up his phone and dialed. Daniel Cole answered immediately. We've tracked the network, Daniel said, voice low. It's younger, faster, and willing to be violent. They call themselves the Crimson Syndicate. They've been learning from the mistakes of the Circle. Ethan didn't flinch. Then we'll make new mistakes, ones they can't exploit. The next 3 days were a blur of strategy. Surveillance teams deployed, insider contacts contacted, safe houses prepared. By the fourth night, Ethan received intel that the Crimson Syndicate planned a coordinated strike, a simultaneous attack on Claire's company, Robert's office, and a warehouse storing critical records from the Circle's investigation. Ethan briefed Claire. We split them. We don't fight on their terms. Claire nodded. Then we set the stage. At midnight, the city's industrial district became a chessboard. Ethan moved like a shadow, coordinating with federal agents, tracking vehicles, predicting movements. Claire was in constant communication, her keen intellect anticipating financial strikes before they happened. The first confrontation was brutal. Armed operatives tried to raid a warehouse near the port. Ethan's team intercepted them, outmaneuvering every move. Gunfire echoed in the distance, but no casualties, just containment. Meanwhile, Claire intercepted a digital attack on her company. Code traced back to the syndicate's server. She shut it down, rerouted funds, and left false traces to confuse the attackers. By 3 a.m., the Crimson Syndicate realized they had been lured into multiple traps. Frustration turned to panic. Leaders tried to communicate but found every channel compromised. Ethan watched the city from a rooftop, Claire beside him, both silent except for the hum of the wind and distant sirens. They think they're clever, Ethan said quietly. But clever doesn't beat preparation. Claire rested her head against his shoulder. Do you ever sleep? Only when the city does, Ethan replied. A sudden alert pinged on Ethan's tablet. A location. One of the syndicate's key leaders, Elijah Kane, was spotted near a private dock, attempting to flee the state. That's our chance, Ethan said. If we take him, the rest will scatter. They moved immediately, agents in tow. The docks were silent except for the water lapping against rusted hulls. Kane's speedboat waited, engine idling. He had a gun, but Ethan was faster, closing the distance before Kane could react. A struggle ensued. Kane fired a shot that missed. Ethan tackled him into the water. Agents pulled Kane onto the dock, wet, furious, and helpless. Claire approached, arms crossed. You always jump in? Ethan offered a dry smile. Always. By dawn, the Crimson Syndicate's structure collapsed. Leaders arrested, assets frozen, communications dismantled. Ethan and Claire stood on the pier, looking out over the fog-laden water. Silence this time was peaceful, not threatening. Do you think it's really over? Claire asked. Ethan shook his head. Never truly. But for now, we won. He turned to her. And this time we don't rebuild an empire. We rebuild lives. Claire smiled faintly. Starting with ours? Ethan's gaze softened. Starting with ours. The city breathed around them. Headlines the next morning hailed Ethan Cole not just as a savior, but as a man who could face overwhelming darkness and emerge with integrity intact. The calm lasted only a week. Ethan had hoped that with the Crimson Syndicate dismantled, the city could finally breathe. But even as he returned to his routines, reviewing circle records, meeting with Claire, checking on Robert, the quiet unease in the back of his mind wouldn't leave. He knew power vacuums attract predators. He knew someone was waiting for a single misstep. It started small. Anonymous calls, slight delays in shipments. One of Claire's key investors suddenly vanished. Then, late one evening, a message appeared on Ethan's secure line. "You stopped us, but you didn't see the whole game. Are you ready for round 2? No. Signature. No hint of who sent it, just a threat disguised as a question. Ethan showed it to Claire, her eyes narrowed. "They're taunting you. They're testing me," Ethan said. "And I don't fail tests." The next morning, news broke that one of the Redwood Circle's former allies had been found dead under suspicious circumstances. It was made to look like an accident, but Ethan knew better. "This is personal," Daniel said, joining them in the safe house. "They're not just rebuilding. They're learning from you." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Then we need to finish this. Once and for all." Claire placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're not alone." They planned carefully. The intelligence Ethan had collected over months revealed a network of hidden players still loyal to Leonard Cross, Elijah Kane, and even fragments of the old circle. They were organized, discreet, and dangerous. By midnight, Ethan, Claire, and Daniel set out in unmarked vehicles toward a secluded estate on the outskirts of Sacramento, a hub they had traced as the final stronghold of the remaining faction. The air was tense, every shadow suspicious. As they approached, floodlights illuminated a sprawling mansion. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, moving in coordinated patterns. Ethan scanned the layout with practiced eyes. "We can't go in loud," he whispered. "We need to divide their attention." Claire nodded. "I can trigger the security alarms on the east wing. They'll think it's a breach." Ethan smirked. "Exactly." The plan unfolded with precision. Claire infiltrated the east wing remotely, setting off silent alarms and redirecting patrols. Ethan and Daniel slipped through the west side, neutralizing guards quietly, one by one. Inside, the remaining leaders of the faction were gathered. They hadn't expected Ethan to reach them so quickly. When the trio burst into the main hall, the room erupted into chaos. "You think you can end this?" one man shouted, drawing a weapon. Ethan reacted instantly. The fight was brutal. Calculated strikes, quick takedowns, and no hesitation. Claire provided digital support, disabling communications and locking doors to prevent escape. Daniel's presence alone was intimidating. His past reputation as the Red Wolf caused several attackers to falter. Within minutes, the remaining faction members were subdued, tied, or fled. The estate fell silent except for the faint hum of emergency lights. Ethan walked to the center of the room, surveying the scene. "This ends tonight," he said. "No exceptions." He found a final folder on a desk, documents detailing plans for a massive financial sabotage targeting not just Redwood Circle remnants, but Claire's company and several public institutions. He smiled coldly. "Almost missed this." Claire stepped beside him. "You always find the last piece." Ethan nodded. "It's the piece that matters most." The authorities arrived shortly after, taking the remaining members into custody. Media coverage exploded, framing Ethan as the man who dismantled an underground empire twice over, protecting the city from shadows that most didn't even know existed. Hours later, Ethan and Claire stood outside, watching the sun rise over the Sacramento River. Silence felt earned. The weight of months of danger, fear, and strategy lifted slightly from their shoulders. "Do you feel normal?" Claire asked, her voice quiet. Ethan shook his head. Normal doesn't exist in this line of work. She laughed softly. Then what do we have? Ethan looked at her, eyes steady. We have each other, and we have control over what matters most. Our choices. Claire smiled, the first genuine, unguarded smile Ethan had seen in months. Then let's choose wisely. He placed a hand over hers. Together. The city below was waking up, unaware of how close it had come to chaos, unaware of the invisible war that had raged for months. But for Ethan, Claire, and Robert, the battle had reached its conclusion. The remaining threats neutralized, the corrupt dismantled, and the future, uncertain, but free from the shadows of the past. As they walked away from the estate, side by side, the early morning light reflected off the water, promising hope, redemption, and a life earned, not given. The morning sunlight cut through the fog over the Sacramento River. As Ethan, Claire, and Robert returned to the city, for the first time in months, the streets felt quiet. Normal. But Ethan knew better than to trust appearances. The city might breathe, but shadows always lingered. He parked outside a small cafe downtown, one of the few places where he could step away from the constant scrutiny. Claire followed, hands tucked into her coat pockets, scanning the street with quiet vigilance. Robert leaned against the car, rubbing his temples. You've done enough, Robert said quietly. Let it go now. Let the city heal. Ethan shook his head. Healing isn't passive. It's active. If we stop now, someone else will rise to fill the void. Claire stepped closer. Then we ensure whoever comes next does it differently. Transparently. Robert smiled faintly. Even my son sounds like a leader now. The trio entered the cafe. Inside, the aroma of coffee and fresh pastries filled the air. A small group of early morning patrons watched Ethan as he moved to a corner table. The whispers were subtle but unmistakable. That's him, the man who dismantled the circle twice. Ethan ignored them. His focus was on the future, on rebuilding, not an empire, but trust. Over the next weeks, the remaining assets of the Redwood Commerce Circle were audited and distributed fairly under government oversight. Former members faced legal consequences, while employees who had been coerced or threatened were offered protection and support. Ethan oversaw the process personally, ensuring fairness and integrity. One evening, as the city skyline shimmered in the twilight, Ethan and Claire met on a rooftop overlooking the financial district. The air was cool, carrying the scent of the river and the distant hum of traffic. You think people will ever see it as you want them to? Claire asked, voice soft. Ethan leaned against the railing, eyes fixed on the horizon. Some will, some won't. That's fine. I don't. Their approval. Claire rested her head on his shoulder. You never stop, do you? Only when it matters, Ethan replied. And right now, it matters. They stood together, watching the city breathe a new rhythm. Not perfect, not free from ambition or greed, but safer, cleaner, more accountable. Weeks later, Ethan received an invitation to testify before a congressional committee about the dismantling of the circle and the protection of the city's financial integrity. He walked into the room with Claire at his side, unwavering and poised. Questions came, accusations followed, but Ethan answered each calmly, confidently, with evidence and unwavering integrity. By the end, even the most skeptical observers were forced to acknowledge the truth. He had acted decisively, morally, and effectively. Returning home that evening, Claire turned to him. You've changed the city, Ethan. But what about yourself? Ethan considered this. I've learned a lot about power, about responsibility, about trust, Claire smiled. And love? He looked at her, his gaze steady and unflinching. That, I've learned, isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. For the first time, Ethan allowed himself to relax completely. The weight of the circle, the syndicate, the threats, they no longer defined him. The city could rebuild, but so could he. The next morning, Robert joined them on the pier, the three of them standing side by side, looking over the river that had witnessed so much struggle, fear, and courage. Ethan handed Robert a small, engraved key, a symbolic gesture of trust and legacy. "This city is ours to protect," Ethan said, "but not through fear, through responsibility, integrity, and courage." Claire placed her hand in Ethan's. "Then let's walk forward. Together." The camera pulled back slowly, capturing the trio as silhouettes against the rising sun. The city glimmered in the distance, alive, resilient, and ready for a new chapter. If you followed Ethan and Claire's journey to the very end, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment who you think deserves power in a world full of corruption. Share this story and let others experience the rise of integrity over greed.